Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. And I am so excited to introduce my guest to you today. She is so cool. And really, it's time to get organized, everyone. We've got marketing projects left and right. We've got a new year. We've got new strategies. And in her words, let's keep calm in the chaos. Let's do it. My guest is a former TV rock star, project managing with TV production. She's the founder of the Project Designer, in my opinion, a project management superhero, and actually an Instagram legend. Nicole Jackson, welcome.
Wow, that is such an amazing introduction. Thank you, Casey. I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's pretty much the only thing I do right on this podcast. Everything else is downhill from here. But yeah, welcome.
But it's a great start. Thank you.
Totally. I have a few people that just loop the introduction over and over for themselves in the morning. You know, it's like their own little 5-minute personal.
Yeah, it's like the pump up to get you ready for the day.
Yes.
Like that.
For the podcast. So here's the theme for everyone listening and for us. It's all, now you're so organized. We're going to talk about where we met and everything. But it's all about marketing teams. We've got teams of marketers. We've got a lot of marketers listening, sales too, and even some project managers. And it's like, how do we get organized? Keep calm in the chaos? How do we have the right mindset to approach all the different projects that we're trying to juggle? And maybe you're not a natural project manager. Well, how can you adjust to fit your own style and specialties? And then also, how does that fit in with other people on your team? And if you're a solo, you're a marketer, and you just like, and one time I was a marketer all by myself, and there's a CEO and there's sales. Well, you're still in a team. You're in the revenue team. So we got to figure out how we can work with all these people. So that's why you're here. That's why Nicole's here. So here we go. This is heavy, but I've been working out. This is Thor's hammer. So I want you to take that hammer and I want you to smash like some bogus strategy or some la words that you've been hearing about business or marketing that you just set the record straight.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in corporate, in television, and, a topic that came up often was management and how to manage people and how to work with people. And one thing that I struggled with at first, and that I found a lot of other people struggling with, was how to deal with emotions at work. And a myth that is out there, which is feelings don't belong at work, is the myth that I would like to smash.
All right, take it today. Smash that.
Yeah. So the reason is that when we're dealing with people, which is what we're doing at work, we're dealing with clients, we're dealing with teams. Maybe you have a team that you're working with directly. Maybe you're trying to work with various departments at the organization. You have to deal with people, and people are humans, and humans have feelings. And so a book that I'm reading right now is actually by Brené Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Oh,
yeah. She has a video on empathy, I think, that's really badass.
Yeah, she studies a lot. She's a researcher and studies a lot about courage and shame and vulnerability. And she just came out with a new book. I swear I don't work for her, but it's called Dare to Lead. And one thing that she mentioned in the book that I absolutely loved is that she was talking about leaders, and leadership is something that you have regardless of what level you're on a team or at a company. Leadership is something that everyone has. And one thing she says is that leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to people's fears and feelings, or an unreasonable amount of time managing ineffective and unproductive behavior. And I thought this was just so important for businesses of any size. And I think it's true, in business, but also in life as well. People are going to have feelings and fears and experiences and perspectives. And if you don't address them, it's not going to work well.
Yeah, you set yourself up. That's how interesting, right? You could either, I love that, attend to the feelings, the actual cause of whatever performance may or may not be happening, or you can just manage the result of the fact that you ignored everyone's feelings.
Totally.
And how true is that? The people we bump into all the time, they're either, and unfortunately, probably more of the latter, where more people are just like, oh, these employees, or oh, my team or my coworkers. It's like, there's a cause, and that's the result. That's not really the cause.
Totally. And I'll give you an example. So when I worked at my job in television, I worked in the financial department. And so one of the things we were responsible for was purchasing any software systems, team contractors that would need to come in to support us with projects.
Right.
And part of that was working with the engineering team, the IT team, the creative department, engineering, to really understand what we needed and then work with finance and the vendors to actually negotiate a deal. And so there was one guy that I worked with, and he was a financial manager, and he came out of his boss's office with his shoulders down and his head down, and his face was red. And he came over to me, and we were friends, and, talked a lot about like ways to kind of help each other out at work and ways to deliver. And he's like, I'm so pissed. And he said, I just got, screamed at in that office.
What?
And I presented a spreadsheet, and it wasn't accurate, and my boss got in trouble, and now she yelled at me, and just all of this stuff. And so at that point, I had been practicing mindfulness and being aware of what's happening. And it was very clear that this guy, like rightfully so, was angry. And so he's like, I'm going to go and like talk to my team. I can't believe there was this mistake. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, so you just got, in trouble basically with your boss because your boss got in trouble with her boss. Yeah. And now you have a choice. Like, you can either go and behave the same way to your team, or you can choose something different. Right. And it was this moment where he was able to pause. And that's something that I talk to my clients about in management and leadership, is that learning how to pause. And this is what, when you are aware of and practice mindfulness, practice meditation, it supports you in knowing when to stop and take a minute. And so by taking a minute and by actually attending to his own fears, and because he was scared, his boss was scared, his boss's boss was scared. That's why this was all happening.
Rolling downhill kind of thing.
Yeah, he was able to make a better choice. And so it was in that like small moment that I realized that there really is a domino effect when it comes to how people treat each other, especially in the workplace. And it can make a huge difference in your team. And again, regardless of whether you have a team of people or just you're interacting with other people, which I'm sure you are if you are employed. Right. And it makes a huge difference because if he went and treated his team the same way, they would have gotten nowhere, right? And that's that unproductive behavior and inefficiency that Bernice, from my perspective, is talking about in her book.
Yeah, that chain reaction. I mean, you see that with just even negativity or positivity. Someone was nice to you and you're like, I'm nice. Or someone was mean to you, and it's like you kind of just want to offload that, is that sort of that knee-jerk reaction, but then you're just making somebody else's day miserable. And then you can kind of see that just go everywhere. And so it sounds like it was happening at that company where bosses were just hitting on their people. I mean, sometimes you got to correct, but this isn't preschool. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that, I appreciate positivity. I appreciate surrounding myself with people who lift me up, and there's no like wrong feeling or emotion. Like, I get angry sometimes and it doesn't look positive, right? But if I stop myself, I'm able to pause and I can actually process the feeling. Right. I'm able to show up differently and have a different perspective. And that's the whole, we joke, about the calm and the chaos. It's a lot of work, and it's not pretending that something's not happening and showing up with like a happy face. It's actually doing the work of identifying what's happening and what's going on, understanding it, facing it, so that you can show up in your life with the people that surround you as your best self.
Yeah, so true. It reminds me, Dan Sullivan has a book where he talks a little bit about, in that moment, and you talked about that pause being so important. In that moment, something happens. Sometimes we turn red, or we want to just knee-jerk reaction, be mad back, or go shit on somebody else, whatever. Like, there's a sort of natural reaction, and you can either have that reactive response, which could be all the bad things you probably will regret doing, sending that email you shouldn't send, or he calls it the creative response. And one of the things in that list is pausing. Another thing might be just taking a deep breath, jumping on a trampoline, something, right? Writing down for yourself what's going on, but some kind of response where you're taking action as opposed to just reacting as if you don't have any control over it.
Totally. And I think it's important to take a look at triggers. So if you are having an emotional response to something, so for me, it's frustration. So if I know that I'm starting to feeling frustrated with someone, it's because it's identifying something in myself that I need to work on. So if somebody is talking to me at work and they're saying like, this spreadsheet isn't right. It's not correct. I can't believe you did this. Da, 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 da. It's not going to bother me if I know that that's not true. But if I have any insecurities or doubts in myself, that is really going to impact me. I think it happens a lot with kids because they're developing themselves and their confidence. As an adult, I think it's something that you can kind of take a look at to see, this person isn't causing me to feel this way. I'm feeling this way because of something. What is that?
Right. Just trying to, in the moment, just take a step back. I mean, it's not easy for everyone. Some people, maybe I step back too much. So like, let's look at myself right now. But other people just taking a step back and saying, okay, what are you seeing right now? What are you feeling?
Mm-hmm. And then it allows you, and I know of Dan Sullivan actually from our conversations, and
right.
I understand, and I think, when you examine what is happening in the moment and you're able to pause and you're able to listen and get curious, that's where opportunities can happen. So I'll give you an example. I have a small business. I work with, I had a project management agency for 4 years. We worked with a lot of clients, and I had one client, we worked with them for, I think about a year or 2 years actually. And we had a conversation at the end of their contract to say, what's coming up for you? Where do you need support? To see how we could continue to support them in their business.
Right.
And she said, you know what? I don't think I need your support anymore. And in that moment, I'm like, great. But I paused.
Yeah.
I stayed present and I said, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And what I found is that she didn't not want to work with us because she wasn't happy with our service offering. We were operating as a third-party contractor in her business when it came to project management, and she needed to hire a full-time employee to fill the position. And so by staying open, by staying curious, I could ask those questions. And then what I realized is that we could help her hire in the position. So it actually created another opportunity. So when you're able to start getting a handle on those feelings and fears and emotions and get curious, that's when opportunity can happen. That's when you might be able to think of something that's maybe you have a new idea for a marketing campaign, or you have, some ideas of different things, and you can also collaborate with people too.
Right.
Because you're staying open.
Right. I love that. Tell me more. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten was to stay curious or be curious. And so I actually have, let me see this over here. I have a Hot Wheels of the Curiosity Rover.
Nice.
On my wall. I don't know how much I paid for that on eBay, but the Curiosity Rover. And I also have a t-shirt of the rover on my wall too, just to remind me, just wherever I go, just curious. And you're so right. Like, it's always these misconceptions. Like, someone said something, and the story we tell ourselves about what they said is that they hate us, they think our services suck or whatever.
Right. You start making assumptions. And that's what curiosity, I think, stops, is making assumptions that that may not be true. Telling yourself a story about what might not even be happening at all. And so I
Right.
think the reason why this is so important and why this comes up when you're executing projects and when you're working with other people is because it makes things more efficient.
Yeah.
So if you are spending a ton of time and energy trying to manage this unproductive behavior because you're not tending to maybe to your own fears and feelings, but to other people's as well, and understanding where they're coming from, it's going to waste a ton of time that you could be focusing in on, like, what are the priorities? What do we need to execute? How can we get things done?
Right.
And so what I hear from people often is, I don't want to have a conversation with someone about this thing because it's going to be a huge waste of time. So let's say you're working together on a project and you're trying to work with the sales department, and there's a personality there that you feel like you don't really jive with, and you feel like it's holding the project back. It's like, I don't want to talk to them because it's just gonna it's gonna be an hour of our time, and we don't have time for that.
Right.
I think the opposite. If you take the time to nip it in the bud, you will be so much more productive together. I worked with a gentleman at my job, and it was very clear that there was some friction on the team. Our communication styles were not on the same page. I would write these nice emails and I would get unworded answers for him. And he was he was the director of a department. And I knocked on his door and went to his office and said, "Hey, what's going on? I feel like you don't like me. What's happening?" And
what
so
was his response?
He was like, "Thank you for saying something." And what was happening is that he had a bunch of challenges on his plate. He had a ton of projects.
Right.
He was getting a lot of pushback from people. And so he was able to explain where he was coming from. I think he also was just super direct in email for some reason. But I was also able to express that when he sent me one-worded emails, it didn't help me, and it didn't help me help him get his project done.
Right.
So could we come up with a compromise? So I listened to what he was saying, and it sucks sometimes to listen to what somebody has to say and give you feedback about what you're doing or the department that you're working, with, or your colleagues that you care about and support, but you have to listen. And then I was able to express what was coming up for me, and then we were able to actually come up with a solution. And I don't think a whole lot of people do that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It can be tough to listen too.
What was that?
It can be tough to listen, but actually listen, not listen while lining up what you're going to say next. And then, it's a little scary to do that because you're like, oh, I want to be prepared and have my next pounce on my next opening. But it's maybe if you just stop thinking for a second and actually try to listen some more, you might pick up on, the subtle, the unspoken verbal cues.
This is the hard stuff. This is being hardcore, is actually being able to sit and listen to somebody who might not have something that's great to say about you.
Right.
And not start going back and getting defensive and attacking as well, defending. And so, I know getting things done and hustling and working hard and
grinding it out.
Yeah. And working long hours. It's that's not hard. That's easy to do. It's easy to sweep things under the rug. It's easy to just keep going and not address these things. The hard stuff is actually having these conversations.
Yeah. And collaboration can be hard too. I remember when we should talk about, how we met, but we were out in Arizona for training, and they put us in a group with people that were different from us. And we'll explain just how different in a second, but we were different. And what I realized was, for the most part, I had been collaborating with my own company and with other people who were very similar and, or at least accommodatingly similar. And so when I was thrust in this team with people that actually initiate in different ways, and they are totally different planet, it was whoa, this is hard. Because my normal reaction was I just wanted to go and write the answers down or get everyone to agree and okay, let's go to the next one. Let's do this one. Let's cover the details. Okay, go. And then my group just talked the whole, they talked for the whole time. And at the end they were like, so you figured out the answers, right? Or you knew you're speak for us. And I was like, okay, sure. But I was frustrated that I couldn't wrangle them all, but they were just different. But it just showed me just how difficult collaboration can be, while at the same time, so much worth it, because when I was hanging out with you, some of our other classmates, it was like, this is cool. I want to hang out with more people that are different from me. But then when you actually need to collaborate, it's like, that's where the work comes in.
Totally. And I think, the reason when it does work with people, when you're working with people who have different strengths than you do and who operate differently, it works when you know yourself.
Yes.
You communicate that and you understand others too. And I think so we were at the Kolbe certification training, which is a assessment that measures how you take action naturally. And so what I have found, I've used this assessment with all of my clients, with all of my team members. It's like $50. I've given it to all of my family members.
Yep.
Mom, dad, brother, husband, because I want to know how people take action.
Right.
And, I have been on teams before knowing about the Kolbe, where there's been someone on the team who has these ideas all of the time. It's like one idea after another day. All right, everyone go. And then just leaves. It's like, what? Wait a minute. And after going through the, understanding Kolbe and going through the certification, we now know that is likely someone who's an initiating quick start, which is somebody who just basically can brainstorm, come up with innovating ideas, and needs the support and strengths of people who don't necessarily come up with as many ideas as fast, but have the ability to keep the same what's currently working and identify, okay, out of all of these ideas, what makes the most sense to move forward.
Right.
But it, like, before understanding about the assessment and knowing myself, right? Because in a typical situation, I'd say that guy is different than me and I don't like how he works and I don't want to work with him. My way is better.
Right.
Right. Because it was almost like we were speaking different languages.
Totally.
And so understanding myself, both like my preferences and like values, how I take action, and knowing that there is a value in having people around me that are different has made it a lot easier for me to work with people. Right. And you actually prevent a lot of conflict too.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that you stated that, understanding yourself first is really important. And I think what it does is it sets the stage that how you act is a strength. But what's also cool is how everyone else acts is their strength, right? So it gets you out of that, well, I'm just status quo and everybody else sucks. Like everyone else lacks what I have, so they're all deficient and I'm okay. No. You're awesome and they're awesome too. Their version of awesome is a different approach, but you need them. Like what we realize is you end up, you can't have like a maxed out score on all the things. There's like, what is it? 4 times 3, like 16. I don't know math. There's a lot of strengths, right? There's a lot of different 12 strengths, and you can't have them all. You can have 4. So that means there's 8 other ones you don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I happen to be, so for everyone listening, there are 4 different action modes. So one is fact finding, which is basically gathering information, researching, asking questions, and you might initiate with that and you might not. I initiate, well, let me go through the 4. So there's follow through, which is how you design and organize systems. There is quick start, which is how you handle and tolerate risk. And then there's implementer, which is how you deal with tangibles and space.
Right.
And so I am an initiating fact finder. I like to ask a lot of questions and I like to get a lot of information. And so I love using Kolbe when it comes to sales because I can understand how my prospect is going to buy based on their Kolbe. And so I know if they are an initiating fact finder, I should say, what questions do you have for me? Because they're going to have questions. If they like to research, I might say, let me put all of this information into an email. I'll send it over to you and let's talk in a few days.
Right. Every single white paper and PDF we have, anything you possibly need. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All of the data so that you can feel comfortable and know what you're getting. And for quick starts, it's the same with sales. It's like initiating quick starts usually will buy, like they want it and they want it now and they want it quickly.
True.
And counteracting quick starts, which is myself, need to process the information and need to take more time and aren't like quite ready to take the amount of risk that an initiating fact finder might. And so I am an initiating fact finder and a counteracting quick start, which means I need processing time. I am terrible to sell to. So when I get on a call with a prospect and I know they're the same as me, they're initiating fact finder and they're counteracting quick start.
You just hang up the phone at that point, or no? So
I'm sorry, I don't think we'll be a good fit, because I'm just kidding. But a lot of the people that we were selling to, a lot of people who were purchasing our services and needing project managers were initiating quick starts like you. Yeah. So it's like they had all of these ideas. It was a struggle for them to find a team that could keep up with them. And so we would get on a phone, they would give me their credit card information, and we were ready to go. So it's interesting how you can use this in different aspects of working with people. It could be in a sales situation, it could be on a team, but it's helpful to know thyself and understand that others, the way that they're behaving or maybe how they're acting is a strength too. It's figuring out how to work together.
Right. And this is so important too for understanding your buyer. We've had some great people on here where we talk about interviewing them and trying to figure out their buyer persona. What path did they take? And what's interesting is Colby would actually indicate, it would give you it would kind of let you know ahead of time, this is probably the route they're going to take based on their style of how they approach problems. And so what's interesting is, but personas are one part of it, maybe your profile, segmentation, what industry are they in? But this is a great reminder that there's different styles people might have. They may be a marketing manager. You might have like 4 people that are marketing managers, or people that are buying your stuff, but they may approach things completely different. They may want all the facts, or the opposite, which is, please, I don't want all the facts. Give me the bottom line. Yes. And if you give all the facts to the bottom line person, they don't read them.
Yep.
And they get frustrated.
And there is a way. Yeah, there is a way to accommodate both in email marketing and in sales too, where you can, there's a reason why there's usually a follow-up sequence if you're trying to sell something, right? Is that the people who are quick starts, who are reading and who are ready to take action and have whatever the information is that they need, you can find a way to get them to buy right away by offering and maybe selling to them in the first email. For the people that are going to take more time, you can have the follow-up sequence answering objections, really getting inside of their heads to understand, okay, like what are some of the objections that they have to moving forward, and how can I answer like every single objection so that they have all of the information that they need.
Right.
I run marketing campaigns, and when I'm, selling my program, it's a lot of times people buy on that last email. And it's because one of my programs I'm selling to project managers who need information and who it usually takes them some time to purchase. Now it's not always, but what?
Do you tell them it's the last email? This is it. This is the caboose.
Yeah, there's a countdown timer. They have 5 days.
It's like, this is it.
Yeah.
What happens?
This is it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's, I've given you all of the information. Now it's your choice. And a lot of people will buy on that last email. Now, if I were selling to primarily quick starts, that strategy might be a little bit different.
Right.
There are ways, I think when you can approach marketing from the perspective of, handling these different types of Colby, Colby scores, it makes a big difference.
Totally. All right. So I just realized, I think I introduced you as like Nicole Jackson. I forgot your last name.
Miller.
Well, yeah, and I have it written down here, but I was like, what did I say? But
it's
Nicole
okay.
Jackson
I do
Miller.
both.
So people, if you're searching for her online right now and you're like, I can't find it. My bad. Nicole Jackson Miller, NJM. That's
yeah.
This is really cool. And it's funny because we met at this this Colby event. And one of the things I loved that they explained was there's these 3 parts to the mind. And there's this cognitive side, which is IQ tests and all those kind of things. Um, and just, general intelligence or the knowledge. Do you know the thing? Do you have the skills to do the thing? And that, when there's a challenge, do you know what to do? And then there's this other side, which is the affect, which was always a fun word to say. I was like, affective is so weird. But the affect, the personality side. Why don't I just say personality, people? But so there's that side, and that's what a lot of personality tests captures. And it also changes too. I'm a big fan of DISC. I like it on the personality side, but it changes. My eyes have gone this way, the D's gone up and down, like all sorts of things have happened. So it's kind of hard to really, plan around your strengths if their strengths are always changing every 2 years. It's like you're molting. So what's cool is that third part, which we were introduced, was the conative side, which apparently Socrates had talked about, just didn't know how to measure it. Along comes Kathy Colby, figures out how to measure it. And it's all about your instincts, which is cool. And it's when you're striving too. So striving meaning like going after something that you're not used to doing before. If it's something easy and it's like, hey, no big deal, I'll roll with that. It's usually the other aspects, but striving, that's where conative comes into place. And that's what's most important for teams. I mean, yeah, are they fun to hang out with or not? But more importantly, are they going to get you the documents on time? And how are they going to approach the meeting if you got to come up with a solution and there's a problem and you don't know what to do?
Yeah, it's been really big for us. We help people with their teams. So that's something that I mentor clients on. I've been on teams as the team member. I have my own team. And the Colby has been something that has just become a standard for us doing business. And I recommend it to all of our clients because it really, every client that I've shown the Colby to and they've used it with themselves and with their teams have had just these eye-opening moments of understanding, why people are functioning the way that they are and then how they can utilize them better.
Right. On the utilization side, shout out to Patrick and all the cool people we hung out with in Arizona. It was cold in Arizona. I wish it was hot. I mean, New England people, I'm trying to escape and go somewhere warm.
I'm with you. I was hoping for 75 degrees and we were met with like 55 maybe and then 40 at night or something.
I found out that it was warmer in New Hampshire than it was in Arizona while we were there. And I was like, come on. I went for a run the first morning in a t-shirt and shorts only to kind of get to that thing where your whole body's frozen by the time you're done. I was like, oh, come on, Arizona. But otherwise, beautiful state. But yeah, so we were down there and it was so cool when they presented the different ideas of how you approach a challenge. And you start by having the people that like to brainstorm, but not everyone has to do it because some people are better at shooting holes in your ideas. But there's a point in that, but have them come later, do the brainstorming first, and then have it followed by shoot a bunch of holes, do the fact finding, figure out what needs to happen here. And then you pass it on to the planners, the people that love doing that and are really good at it. So it's it's interesting how you can kind of use everybody in their strengths and not forcing people to do things that they're not good at.
Yep, exactly.
So cool. So cool. So along with that, one of the things you mentioned, you do some marketing already. You do some emails. Now, you also are totally crushing your game on Instagram. Beyond belief. I can't even count the number of stories per day. But sometimes they're abbreviated so much that you have little tick marks at the top of the screen and you just roll with it and just let the Instagram story take you. How did you just sort of get it? Or did you sort of learn into it? How's it going for you? You give us kind of like that, school us on Instagram here.
Yeah. So Instagram was something that I was never really into until probably about a year and a half ago. I was always on Facebook. I did a bunch of Facebook Lives. I had a great response there. And I am trying to remember even why I think I signed up for Instagram and was just I'd post, a picture every once in a while of my dog or a beer I was drinking or something. And then over the course, I would say, of the past, even just the past few months, I've seen a lot of people who are in my industry on Instagram, my audience is on Instagram. And so when we were going over where do we want to focus our marketing efforts, Instagram was really the place to do it. And, I have a small company, so we cannot be everywhere. And I don't even think it makes sense to be everywhere anyway. You want to make sure that you're where your audience is.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, if I were to pick one thing, it would be Instagram. And so we started playing around with different feed posts, which are like the posts that just are automatically populated on your page, and different types of images and pictures and quotes. And what we found is that people loved hearing like the personal stuff. People are so nosy, which makes sense. And it's also like, I remember I was actually listening to your podcast on like telling stories.
Woohoo.
And that telling stories and connecting with people on a personal level is important. People want to know, especially in my industry, they want to know who they're talking to. And I think even with big brands, they still want to understand and be connected with people.
Right.
And so
was that Tom?
What?
Was that Tom?
It might have been. Yeah, I think
Tom.
so.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so it was kind of through this experimentation that I realized, people want to hear what I have to say. They want to hear stories about me. It's actually quite therapeutic for me to start sharing some of my stories too, because, and then you realize, I have a lot of stories to share that would be really helpful for people. And so then I started with the Instagram stories. And they're short clips. What is it, like 15 seconds or something, where you can do images or you can do video. And it's kind of like a behind the scenes for some stories. Like it's a behind the scene glimpse of what's going on, like a day in the life. Plus it's also a place where I can promote things that are coming up. I have found now that people are viewing stories more than feed posts. I have no data behind that. But I have heard that in various places that I've, read. And I even know I'm observing my own behavior. And I'm just going through everyone's stories that I like to follow. So, that's really how it started. It was kind of, I wasn't really into it. And then I started really enjoying it.
And I guess there's not as much preparation on it. And they disappear, right? It's not like they're saved somewhere.
So they do disappear. And then what they have now is highlights. As of January 2019, they have highlights.
Hey.
Who knows what they'll have in 3 months from now. But they have highlights where you can save certain stories so that people can view them afterwards. For example, I have a program called the CEO Roundtable. I have a highlight. And anything that's related to that program is in that highlight. And so people can view that at any time. I have a really cute dog.
Yeah.
I have a highlight for Scout, my dog, and all of those pictures. And, again, people want that holistic view of who you are as a person in order to buy, who you are as a company. What are your values? And so by showing people, listen, I like coffee. I like old fashions. I like my dog, and I have all of this really great information to share. So I sprinkle that in too.
This reminds me of Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And the joke with Twitter was, are you telling me you're going to brush your teeth now? It's like, no, but it was always good to have a mix of personal and professional. It was never just sharing links. God, that would be boring. It was, some really cool things you're reading, and then it might be something that happened. I shared this one thing where I bumped into someone at Starbucks. They sat next to me and I was doing my thing. They had a book on grieving, and it was like, and then they left eventually. I didn't say anything to them because I'm like, would you be nosy, but I put a little shout out to them on Twitter, just anonymously, to send it to Universe. But it's like, to your point, people want to know the real you underneath the link sharing, and so a good mixture of both, I think, is always fair. This sounds like it's basically an upgrade to Twitter, where instead of just your thoughts on paper, now it's like you talking and being real with people, maybe off stage, maybe the behind the stage being real, and then some things from the on stage or some things from teaching, but it's that whole person.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it comes down, and this is on Twitter too, to the conversation. So, there's like one-way marketing of just post, 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 but then people
Yeah.
are commenting and engaging and then showing that you're responding and asking questions. And it is a time commitment.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because that's where you can get really, well, you can form connections if that's of value to you, because it is to many companies and
Yes.
people. You can also get really good information on your audience, and you can ask them questions. So sometimes in my stories, I'll ask, are you building a team right now? And people can pull in yes or no. When it comes to, and you can also do a question. So
Ah,
what's your biggest struggle when it comes to building a team? People can type in their responses. And so now you're actually getting consumer feedback that I can then be using on my sales page and in my emails, and actually understanding where people are coming from, and knowing whether or not I'm the one to be able to support them, or knowing, listen, actually, I'm going to start reading this book and then do a review of it, because this is all about these topics that people are talking about.
what kind of engagement levels do you have? Like,
Um, like,
like the polls. I did it just to say hi.
yeah. So I would say compared to people who are Instagram stars, I do not have a lot of followers. Like, there's people who have like 1 million followers on Instagram.
Sure.
I think I have like maybe 11.
Yeah, to be honest though, they basically just take pictures of their butts. So,
Or there's bots
oh, they're bot.
that follow. Yeah, you can hire companies that will like follow people, and then people follow them back, and then they unfollow them. Anyway,
Sounds bad, but good at the same time.
yeah, there's mixed reviews, but I have about 1,100-ish followers.
Yep.
And I would say that for my stories, there's about 100 to 150 people who will be viewing my stories. If I tag a location, so let's say I'm at a restaurant and I tag that location, it shows up on their stories.
Right.
If I use a hashtag, it shows up under, I think, like the hashtag if you were to search it.
Oh, cool.
So that can also expand the engagement. But without doing any of that, I'm seeing around 100 to 150 people out of the 1,100.
It's interesting because I was trying to figure out. For someone just starting, or now, is this for, you'd say, personal brands? Should a company be on
Yes.
there, or is it just the name of their marketing team or their CEO or something? Company?
I think both. I think
Both.
companies can definitely be on there. I would just be really mindful of the information that's being shared. I have purchased quite a few things from like products through Instagram ads. So now you can use paid advertising in feeds, but also in stories. And I will say it is so easy to purchase. It's almost too easy.
Yeah, I followed a couple of those links myself. They're pretty snazzy.
Yeah. So, and just like, Facebook advertising, it tracks where you've gone, and there's pixels that identify what ads should be served to you, and, swipe up and buy. And it's so easy to do that. And I've seen a lot more advertising over the course of the past few months as well.
It's funny. It's almost like, where do you spend your time now, or do you just spend your time everywhere? Are we checking everything now? Because I'm seeing some people that I know, and they're posting things on there, and it's like, you might be posting them there and not on Facebook. But the joke is that Facebook owns both of them. But at the same time, it's like, there's so many of them now. I could see it being hard to keep up. But to your point, you found where your audience was at, and you grew that.
Totally. And I think, I am not, I'm not an initiating quick start. However, I have a lot of creative ideas, and there are times where I just want to do everything, and I want to do everything right now. And the times where I have done that has failed miserably because I haven't been able to keep up based on where my business is at right now. I don't have a huge marketing department.
Right.
I've worked with marketing departments when I worked in my job, but I don't have the resources to do that. So, but I think also, even when you have the revenue coming in to support at like big, advertising campaigns, you still need to be super strategic on where you're putting that money. And so if you can identify what's working and what's not, then it's easy to do that now. There's so
Yeah.
many like business pages and insight tools where you can really measure and track, and you can see, okay, I mean, that's how we knew that people liked to know about my personal life because
Right.
we looked at all of the posts and we saw the engagement go up.
Interesting.
So it's a really nice space to experiment as well with content. But to get back to your original question about, should companies be on these platforms? I think as long as your audience is there, yes, it totally makes sense. You can be sharing, customer stories about, their experiences, if depending on what your business is. But really, like, having it be a platform that helps you connect with those people.
Yeah, and that's necessary for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have to do that. I might have to just like dive in, like, if there's going to be one place to do it. And, yours is a great one to watch. You're right. Like, the stories are the more interesting parts of it. And you scroll through, but scrolling can get kind of weird, repetitive. It almost feels like, oh, now I really am doing the slot machine when you scroll.
Yeah.
But when you do stories,
Yeah. And, my advice, if you're just starting out on, like, not just starting out on Instagram, but starting to do it for your business or for like your thought leadership brand or whatever,
Yeah.
is to commit to a certain amount of time. Commit
Okay.
to 3 months of doing it consistently, of showing up, of experimenting, of playing around with different stories and seeing what's working, and different posts, because it does take time. And just like any type of experimentation, sometimes it can get really discouraging. If you post a story and it's like one person showed up. I remember my first Facebook Live, 0 people watched it. And I got out there and I started talking, and it actually probably did more for me than it did for anyone who was listening, because I became better on camera, became better on
Right.
Facebook. It became more natural. So just commit to a certain amount of time and just go all in.
Right.
And see what it looks like at the end.
It's interesting you bring up Facebook Live. You mentioned it before, and I had this thought, I've done those, but what's weird is that on Facebook, it's kind of more of like for some people, at least for me, in my head, it's been like my inner circle. So yes. Facebook is more personal, whereas Twitter, I'd be more out there. Yeah. I could see Instagram being more like the out there thing, whereas maybe Facebook isn't. But I know some people that just add friends like it's hot, and they're not really friends.
Yeah, when I go live on my business page.
Oh.
And so that's important, because you can then use those videos to target potential audiences.
Oh, I like that. Mm-hmm. So you turn those videos into ads.
Yep, you can turn them into ads. Or if you have a different ad, you can target people who have watched your videos for like 10 seconds or 3 seconds. You can target all of those people, because if people are scrolling, I think, I'm not a Facebook ads expert, but if people are scrolling, they're not going to view your video for 3 seconds. But if they view it for at least 3 seconds, it means they've stopped and maybe hit play, which means that they're starting to engage. And then if you're selling something, or maybe you are trying to, build the know, like, and trust, and right. You just have an informational blog post or something that you want to serve to them, you can target those people.
Right.
So yeah, all on a business page.
This is cool, because it just reminds me how much things change, and Twitter used to be the change.
Yep.
Now it's not so much the change. And you gotta stay up with things, you really do. And as much as we may want to just sort of hang out and whatever worked, that doesn't work for SEO. If you try SEO strategies from 20 years ago, you'll probably get banned by Google. So you gotta like stay up with things.
Yeah. And I think it's good to kind of see what's working and what's changing. And I do think that there's value into sticking to one thing, and as long as it continues to work for you. For example, I know a lot of people who use YouTube, and they don't put their videos on Facebook, and they don't put their videos on Instagram, but they have a YouTube channel that, like, I go to every week to look at their content. And so they've stuck with that platform, and it's really serving them well. Their audience is there. I think with Twitter, Twitter is still working great as long as you're showing up and continuing to have conversations with people, and really engage with them. So it's cool to see like what's working and what needs to be tweaked and evolved. You know, when I first started on Facebook, a lot of people were going live on their personal pages and then about business. And then Facebook's like, you can't talk about, like, you can't go live and talk about business on your personal page. And
Yeah, because nobody wants to hear it, because that's not why they're friends
like,
with
wait
you.
a minute, like you're my
Doesn't make sense.
aunt. Why are you like, I don't care about project management.
Yeah.
But you know, now, you know, people are then, you know, and so that's important. It's important to know some things about how stuff is evolving, but I think that there is, you know, a strength and a value in sticking with, you know, what's working and being consistent with it.
This has been really helpful, because I think I've thrown photos on Instagram, and I've done a couple Facebook Lives, but I hadn't had them really squared away in my head like I think I do now, where it's like the next time if I really want to share something on Facebook Live with my peeps, then it's going to be about something about me, as opposed to like, and I don't think I've ever done business stuff with everyone else, but it's like they're not necessarily your fan base. They're just your friends and family. They're not, maybe not even marketers in my case, right? They're like, so me talking about anything to do with marketing doesn't necessarily resonate or matter.
Yeah.
I guess you kind of want it to matter to your audience. Otherwise, you're just putting it out there. But I could see totally where Instagram could be that way, where you can be personal to people way more so. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to just start doing some stories and see what happens. And it might correspond well to the whole rebrand thing we're chatting about, and just have fun with it, try it out. But that's really cool. I can totally see how, you know, and obviously it's popular. People are there. I'm there. So playing around with it and trying new things.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more like friendly. And I feel like Instagram is what Facebook was, where it's like only a few people were on it at first, and then they slowly, I mean, it didn't have the same rules as Facebook. Like Facebook only used to be for college, like,
I know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but like slowly more and more people are coming onto the platform, and I'm sure it will change just like Facebook has at some point, but I think it's worth it. I mean, I'll follow you, so you have at least one follower.
Wait, you don't already follow me?
I
What's
do
going on?
follow you.
Okay.
Are you
I just don't say anything, so you don't even know that you follow me.
Are you using your same, like, do you think you're going to go with your same Instagram handle?
My Casey Chesh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just the easy way. It's good for me to remember myself.
Yeah. I did the same thing. So if you scroll down, and everyone listening, feel free to follow me on Instagram. If you scroll down far enough, you'll see those pictures of like my dog and beer and like a fireworks or something. And then slowly you'll see, and I love doing this actually with other businesses to see like how they've evolved in their branding.
Yeah.
You kind of see over time how it's played out.
Yeah, totally. And for everyone listening, it's The Project Designer.
Yep.
Right, is your Instagram. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. And
Perfect.
We'll do some more links later. But yeah, The Project Designer. Great example. Great. I will emulate you and start getting out there and just doing it. I think it's also, to your point, a good way of just doing that, almost like that self-expression, just gets it off your chest too. And there's some value to that. So my big question is, because I got to know you in Arizona and learned a lot from you today. Who are you? Who are you? How did you become the project designer, the CEO roundtable ringmaster? You know, how did you end up here? Like, what kind of crazy experiences did you have in life that ended up where now you're, you know, the advisor to the stars kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Looking back, so I ask myself that question often, actually, like, how did I get here? You know,
Right.
There's certain times in life where you're trying to figure it out. And I really think that as people grow, we all evolve and things change, you know? So
Sure.
I want to constantly be asking myself that question. And now my phrase is I help people with their people.
Cool.
And I kind of went back and thought about when this started coming up. And I remember in elementary school,
Nice.
I had, you know, a group of friends who would fight, like, you know, and nothing big, but it's just like, oh, well, she said this and she said that, or whatever. I would be the person who would bring everyone together and ask them to share the different sides of the story. And I remember one time my friend said, "Oh, well, like this person said this thing about you," and we were on the phone. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Let me three-way them in." And so like, and that was probably like a little like,
You're like, no, Nicole, no. And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
we're connected, guys. Let's all chat. Like,
That probably wasn't the
no.
best way to do it, but it's like, listen, everyone speak, because what's like getting to the bottom of what's actually going on.
Right.
And so I would definitely say that I needed to refine my skills over time, but that was something that was coming up. And I don't even know where I learned that, honestly. I mean, it
Right.
really was something that felt really innate.
Yeah.
And it was just this natural instinct. And so as I went and, through high school and got into college, I studied film and photography, and I minored in business management. An interesting thing happens in film school, or at least at mine. Everyone that I was in film school with wanted to be a director.
Oh,
They saw a vision, they wanted to direct these films, and no one wanted to do any of the production management.
right.
And that was me. Like, I was, all right, I love your vision and I see how this is all going to come together, but like, when are your actors showing up? How are you feeding them if you plan on filming them for 8 hours? Where are the locations? How are we funding this? And I was just so focused on like that. That would excite me.
Yeah.
And I would say at that point, I took on way more than I could chew.
Hmm.
So because I was in demand.
Yeah. Stage
Everyone,
managers and just managers are just so
yeah,
valuable.
it's not like super sexy. Like, to be a
No,
director of a film is just like, ooh, that sounds great. Like, oh, and the production manager, it's like a kind of a thankless job, but that's
totally.
what I was passionate about. And, we needed each other, right? The
Hmm.
director and the production manager. And so I definitely had a lot of lessons to learn when it came to like overcommitting and understanding what was going on, because I would want to do all of these things and then I would get burnt out. And
Right.
what I realized at the time that I was struggling with is perfectionism.
Mm.
And I had been struggling with that for a really long time, and I didn't know it. Like, I didn't really start to understand it until college, when I started going to therapy, because they offered it there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, something's happening. I need to figure out what this
Sure.
is.
Anytime you can work on yourself,
Yep.
put the oxygen mask on yourself first for sure.
Totally. And I kind of started understanding what was going on, but it wasn't clicking until, I graduated and I started working in New York City, and it was really fast paced. And um, I was like ready to climb the corporate ladder.
Wow.
I was so focused on my career. I wanted to be the best. And that's great. Except like inner perfectionist, not so great.
Okay.
And so I was like coping. I was drinking a bunch. Like I was like so extreme at work that
Sure.
it was like requiring me to be completely extreme and unresponsible in my personal life. Like, I was like, I have to be together. I have to act this way. Da, 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 da. And it's like, I needed a like release from that.
Right.
And so,
And it
and being
sounds fun, but then at the same time, it can be a little empty because you're trying to fill voids as opposed to just having a blast.
totally all the
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
that's what, after working with several different, like a therapist, I worked with a mindfulness, what do I call her? Like
Coach.
expert or so, coach. Yeah. Mindfulness
Yeah.
coach. I still actually speak with her. She
Oh,
is
good.
incredible.
Yeah.
And what she was the one I went to her because I wanted, I was struggling with an eating disorder, and I was
Sure.
like trying to figure out, which happens a lot with perfectionists, like,
Yep.
how do I navigate this? What's my meal plan? Like, thinking I'm going to
Right.
get like this nutrition. And she's like, this is not about food.
Right.
Yeah. And she's like, what if, you just like tweaked the way that you were operating in your professional life and in your life in general, so
Right.
that you weren't spending all of this unnecessary energy
Hmm.
trying to make people happy and trying to please people and trying to appear a certain way. Like, let's see what would happen.
Right.
And so I started incorporating that in, and I, everything changed in the best possible way. Like, I was sleeping better. I
Wow.
felt better at work. I got promoted. I was doing better. I was able to have these conversations because I was okay with being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so that really taught me a lot about how, making these changes and having these difficult conversations and really being self-aware just impacts my life and could impact other lives too. And that's
Right.
how, that's really how I got to where I am now, because what I realized, people liked working with me because I knew how to talk to people
Hmm.
and they felt like I was real. And I was able to be that because I actually was being real,
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that, and the reason why people are very comfortable opening up to me is because I show up as myself. And I
Hmm.
notice the people that I would feel really comfortable with would be totally fine with themselves, and they like mess and all. And
Yeah.
they weren't trying to be perfect. Like, and they were
Right.
great, at whatever they were doing. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's making me feel so much more comfortable. And like, look at these ideas that I'm having and how I can contribute. And so that's what I'm, being now for other people. And it is a work in progress. But that's really understanding and having all of these experiences and helping people with communication and communicating and incorporating mindfulness and just other techniques
Right.
to help them step up in their own leadership is what I love to do. And it's all based on a series of challenges and wins too that's happened in my life.
To be yourself. I think I heard some song on Spotify recently about like the hardest thing is actually just to, it's like stand in the light and be yourself. Or I think it was a song like that. And it was like, yeah, that can be the hardest thing. Just standing in the spotlight and just being like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think you expressed that beautifully on Instagram, where it's like, hey, this is me. Here's my cute, crazy dog. Random stuff happening, like life, person.
Yeah.
But it takes, I'd say, courage, probably some confidence, or if you don't have the latter, then it's like the former, or vice versa. Like it takes something to just put yourself out there, because technically people could reject the real you, which is I think why people have fake thems.
Totally. And it's funny because this reminds me of marketing, that if you're
Yeah,
doing a great job, you should be turning some people away.
interesting. How so?
Because if you're doing a great job being yourself, there's going to be some people that like you and there's going to be some people that don't. If you were
Totally.
doing a great job with marketing,
Totally.
you're going to really attract your ideal clients and your ideal customers, and you should not attract your non-ideal client. Like they're
Right.
not going to like you. And for the
So true.
longest like for the longest time I was just trying to make everyone happy. That doesn't work in marketing and it doesn't work in life,
Right.
because I remember, and it was the same mindfulness coach who told me, like, aim to disappoint people
Hmm.
every day.
Wow.
Because if you're really living your truth and you are prioritizing the things that are important, there's going to be other people who are not prioritizing those same things. And you are going to potentially let them down. Now, if they care about you, they'll understand. If they truly care about you, they'll understand. And if they don't, they won't.
Right.
And this was the same thing. I remember, I've coached people in leaving their jobs and leaving certain teams, and kind of completing their work and moving on to something else. And I'm like, and they're like, some people are saying, I have such a good relationship with my manager. And it's like, if you really have a good relationship with your manager, they may be disappointed, but they will understand. And
Right.
they will tell you that.
Right.
They aren't really, if this relationship is not authentic and real, then they might not. But good thing because why stay in something that you're miserable in
Oh yeah.
when it's not
100%.
real? Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I love that, you mentioned the mindfulness. How would you define that? Because I think we said it a lot today.
Yeah. So mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment
Mm.
without judgment.
That was really good. Did you pull that out of thin air?
No, 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 no.
Can you say
I,
that
I would
again? That was
credit
really
that
good.
to many people. Sharon Salzberg is someone who talks a lot about mindfulness. She has a book called Real Happiness and another book called Real Happiness at Work. I highly recommend.
Huh.
And so the first part, I think a lot of people get this, the paying attention to the present moment. Okay, right now I'm angry. The second part, without judgment, can be a little bit more difficult.
100%.
Well, it's like, well, why am I angry? I shouldn't be angry. This always happens to me. Like, why can't I do things like that's judgment?
Yeah,
That's not necessarily practicing mindfulness.
sure.
So there's a lot of exercises, and you can look them up. There's lots of resources online for mindfulness practices. One thing that I like to do is with my coffee. I will drink my cup of coffee and think about the coffee. And I'm like, ooh, this coffee smells good. This coffee tastes good. I'm not going to think about what I have to do during the day. I'm not going to think about what I did yesterday. I'm not going to think about what I need to buy at the grocery store. I'm going to stay present in the moment and really observe what's happening. And so
Right.
that's a good practice. Start with your coffee.
That's a really good point. And without the judgment, what's interesting without the judgment, in my head, I immediately went to judging other people, and I almost got the sense you were talking about judging yourself. So, but in this case, it's don't judge anyone. Don't judge yourself or anyone else. Like someone's doing something that's making you mad in the moment. You're thinking about like, oh, I'm mad. Now it's like, okay, take a step back before you got mad at them. Like, what is actually going on here? Or I did this. I screwed up. I'm starting to be self-critical of myself. And, oh, hold on, before I beat myself up, what's going on here? And it just the fact that you're sort of looking at your coffee and saying, this is great. This is a moment I can really enjoy. Reminded me of today, actually. Had a really rough morning, kids sick, like up all night, all sorts of, crazy, one of those crazy mornings. And this is one of those days where I'm like, this is my podcast day. I get to go have fun. This is the day's schedule is so beautiful. I'll tell you about it offline. It's really cool. So, it's great. But here I was in the morning just being like, oh, so off my game. But I was outside walking my stupid dog. By the way, if anyone wants a dog, I'll pay you $20 to adopt it. But I was walking this dog. I'm just half kidding. I kind of love her. But walking this dog, she's a puppy, people. She's a puppy. So you forget.
Understood. There's a reason why they make puppies so cute.
Yes, because we don't have oxytocin, so we got to make them super cute.
Yeah.
So I'm walking this thing, and I'd gone from the garage up to the front door, put a new fleece on, and gloves and hat, and I was warm, and I was like, ooh. 2 seconds ago, I wasn't warm. I was cold. That would have been miserable to walk the dog here, but now I've got all the gear on. This is New Hampshire, freezing, right? So all the gear, and so I started talking like that. I was like, look, I'm out walking the dog. I feel it's great, crisp, clean air, and I'm warm. I'm not like part of me is cold, even though it's sub-zero or whatever it is outside. And then I'm looking at my shoes. I'm like, oh, these brand new shoes, I really love them. My feet are happy. And it just kind of reminded me of your coffee moment where it's like, I know all these things, stop, be mindful. What's going on right now? That gratitude, what's going on right now that is just good. And then someone actually coached me. They said, look at that experience as like weather. Storm rolls in, you're like, rain, and then it goes away, and you're like, beautiful day. It doesn't ruin your whole day. There's blue skies. There's blue skies.
Totally. And I think that what is coming up for me as you're talking is the difference between pain and suffering.
Oh, interesting.
So it's very similar to.
You're so smart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because I used to suffer a lot.
Okay. So you earned it. Yeah,
right. Learning through doing it. So so there's pain that happens. So the pain of, maybe being up, my dog was sick I don't have kids yet, but like my dog was sick all night 2 nights ago, and we were outside with him, and it was like just not great. And so there's the pain of not getting enough sleep. The suffering is what is under. Pain is not necessarily within our control. Like if you were to fall down and hit your elbow, like pain is going to happen, and it's not, maybe you could have been more careful when you were walking, but like it's not your fault. Like you can't control that. Like, there's things that happen in life, like natural disasters, things that just are absolutely outside of our control. And then there's the things that are inside of our control, and that is suffering. Suffering is a choice. And so it's what you do with that pain. So if you make up a story about how much, now this day is going to be terrible because I didn't get enough sleep. And now this thing is going to happen. And I can't believe I did this, right? This is the judgment piece. You are suffering. You are causing yourself to suffer.
Right.
And it's okay. Like, it's okay to go there for a minute, but recognizes that it's happening and stop it as soon as you possibly can and figure out a way to process it in a better way. So for myself, for my husband, actually, he loves exercising. He exercises almost every day. And at first I thought it was because he was trying to like look really good. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh geez, like really, you need to go to the gym again.
Right.
Like, damn it.
You're like counteracting his coping mechanism.
And what I realized is that a big reason of why he worked out so much was to help him process what was happening and help like tend to his state so that he could show up in the best way. And that's, some people will punch punching bags when they're angry, or if they're sad, they take care of themselves. Maybe they phone a friend or, journal or find some method of getting it out of you. And so, I think by identifying, okay, when am I going into suffering and how can I draw that back? Because it goes back to what we were talking about originally, which is like, it's not productive.
Yeah.
After I went and supported myself with a mindfulness coaching and came back and like got promoted at work, I had so much more time because I wasn't spending that time feeling sorry for myself, blaming other people, making assumptions and stories about what people were thinking about me. Just let it all go and kept doing my work. Yeah.
Just let it be and be an experience. I love that. Paying attention to the moment without judgment. Yeah. Hey, moment. What's up? How's it going? Nice to meet you. I see you. Sometimes I like you. Sometimes I don't, but at least I see you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with it. And you never know. Next moment could be even better. So
it's true.
This is good stuff. What are some of the ways people can contact you and reach out?
Yeah. So Instagram is the best place. Like,
right. We just talked. Yeah.
Now that is my focus. So it's instagram.com/theprojectdesigner. And you can find my personal stories and you can also get some tips around dealing with your people. Whether it's people on teams, maybe it's your manager. If you are a business owner, there's lots of tips on hiring and stepping up into a leadership role. And you can also direct message me there, which is where I'm the most responsive. So if you have a question, just be like, hey, I heard you on, Casey's podcast, and feel free. I love having conversations. I love answering questions. My word for 2019, if anyone wants to know, is teach.
Yes. What?
Is to teach.
Oh, cool.
I love teaching. That's what I've realized that's what I've been doing. It's what I love and it's what I want to focus on. And so anything that I might be able to share with you, whether it's a resource or language or whatever, I'm happy to do that. And that really is the best space.
Yeah, it's such a giving thing to be a teacher, and it's fun to share your knowledge with other people. It's way more powerful when you share it like that.
Totally.
Just hoarding it to yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
well, it makes a bigger impact, and if there was just like one thing that I said that changed, like gave someone an aha moment, or, I don't believe that everyone should just do what I do or do what I say, but it's taking that information and figuring out like, how can I maybe apply some of this to help my situation?
Totally. Well, this has been awesome. If you looked at the clock, time is just like warped by, like just so fast. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit. Chat marketing, teams, little Colby, and mindfulness. Man, I mean, I love that topic. It's so cool when you can take a step back and look at yourself, and it's a happier life when you can do that because you're enjoying what you can enjoy and appreciating more. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was like such a fun conversation.
I know, right?
Kept going, and I mean, I talked about everything I just absolutely love. So thanks for having the conversation.
Hardcore marketing therapy sesh.
Yeah, I know. I'm feeling great.
I've talked a lot. Now it's like, now you need quiet time. You know, get some more
Exactly.
coffee, just sit there and enjoy the hot coffee, watch the steam come off the
Yeah,
top.
right. I'll just coffee.
So, and so for everyone else listening or watching, if it's on YouTube and you learn something, and I know you did because I literally have page of notes here. And if you learned anything like I did, then share this with someone, right? So get this message into their hands. Maybe it's that person that needs a little help with the mindfulness, or if it's about the Kolbe too. And Kolbe, by the way, is Kolbe. We'll put it in the show notes, but definitely take that. Shoot me a message on Instagram after you take that, and I'll tell you what it means. But yeah, this is really cool. So get this out there amongst the people and your friends and family. So awesome. Well, thanks, Nicole Jackson Miller.
Thank you. It was great being here.
It's been awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.